Hi guys, and welcome back to my channel. So today we are here to talk about a brand new palette that's just been released from Alter Ego. So if that is something you're interested in watching, you're in the right place. We're about to get into it.
I'm a lone wolf. I'm a lone wolf. I'm a lone wolf. I'm a lone wolf. I'm a lone wolf.
All right, you guys. So for those of you that don't know, Alter Ego is a brand new brand that has recently come on the scene, and they seem to be doing dupes. Basically, they're going after more expensive palettes and making them a lot more affordable. They are coming up with their own marketing campaigns. They're coming up with their own packaging, etc. But they are taking color theories and color layouts from more popular, very expensive palettes, and they're bringing them down to a very reasonable price point. A $16 price point to be exact. And the brand new palette that has come out by Alter Ego is called the SAHARA palette, and this is what she looks like. Now, this palette has been teased since about the beginning of September. Everybody's been kind of waiting and had their guesses about this palette and what this palette was going to be duping. Once it was revealed, it seems as though this palette is duping the Natasha Denona Biba palette, which was the neutral palette that Natasha Denona released this year. Now, the Biba palette looks like this, and yeah, I will say that these two are pretty similar in just about every way, except of course the price point. Now, the Biba palette was a little bit on the expensive side, and to me it just looked like a lot of neutrals. Granted, it did look a little bit more my speed. I really like a good neutral palette, but I decided to skip this one. For me, Natasha Denona is really just continuing to price herself out of the market. That brand new palette that just dropped, to me, is at this point, it just seems ridiculous. In 2019, if you can't manage to find a way to make your palettes a little bit more reasonable, for me, I'm just having a really hard time nowadays with the way that products and companies are really just inundating us as consumers with product. I'm trying to be a little bit more picky about where I choose to invest my money. And for me, it's just hard to rationalize dropping that kind of coin on a neutral palette. However, my sister, who is a huge fan of Natasha Denona, was nice enough to allow me to borrow her Biba palette so that we could do some comparisons. Now, talking about the Biba palette, it is in the typical format that Natasha Denona typically has. Now, I am going to have to hold this shade in up here because it continuously falls out of its pan for whatever reason, but this is the Biba palette. It is just a neutral palette, neutral colors. It was very popular because a lot of people obviously use those colors for everyday use. So it is one of those palettes that, you know, is not just a bunch of crazy colors that you don't know if you're going to be able to work with on an everyday. If you are going to get a Natasha Denona palette, that's probably one of the better choices because, again, it is a lot of everyday neutral colors. Now, the SAHARA palette, which retails for $16, also is a neutral palette, and all of the colors seem to be pretty similar. So we are going to go ahead and dive into this. The first thing I want to do is a comparison so that you guys can see what these two look like side by side here. Now again, this is a 15 color eyeshadow palette that features a mix of matte and metallic shades with burgundies, browns, grays, and a black in here. Keep in mind, Alter Ego is cruelty-free and paraben-free as well. And again, the Sahara palette retails for $16. Now up against the Natasha Denona palette, that's obviously a gigantic difference. Side by side, you can definitely see the parallels in the color story. The packaging is different. Obviously, the pan sizes are different. Everything is different from palette to palette. The marketing is different. The component is different. The outside packaging is different. The pan sizes are different. It seems like just about everything except the actual color story is different. So as far as it's not, obviously it's not a ripoff. It's not a direct ripoff, or we wouldn't be talking about it on this channel. It is just a dupe. And I actually really like this palette, you guys. As with the previous palette that we talked about on this channel, that was a dupe for the Huda Beauty New Nudes. I thought that was very ambitious of Alter Ego to go after Huda Beauty because there were some very unique formulas in this palette, but they did a really good job. This is the Daydream palette and still one of my favorites. I love this one from Alter Ego. I was hoping that this was going to be a brand that was consistent and that they were going to consistently produce really good products, and so far I've not been let down at all by Alter Ego. Don't forget, they also have the Temptress palette, and they also have the Goddess palette, which was a dupe of the Natasha Denona Gold palette. That palette is stunning too. So let's go ahead and get into the swatches so that you guys can see these corresponding shades side by side. Now, the way that I do these swatches, for those of you that don't know, is I will go ahead and already have the Natasha Denona swatches already laid down on my arm, and then the ones that you'll actually see being swatched, those will be the Sahara swatches. And I'll be swatching the Sahara next to the corresponding colors from the Natasha Denona Biba palette. So you'll be able to see the colors side by side. So let's go ahead and get into that here. All right, you guys. So here are the shades from the Biba palette. We're going to lay down the first row of the Sahara palette. We're going to start with Mirage, then Camel. Next is Canyon. And then we have Plains, and then Bronze is the very last shade in the top row of the Sahara palette. And once again, the shades on the left side are from the Sahara palette, just so that you can keep that in mind, which is which. I personally think that these are pretty good. I think they look really nice. The middle dark brown color I think is a little bit richer than the Natasha Denona. I think sometimes these can be off by a shade or two, like that mustard color I think is a little bit lighter in the Sahara palette, but for the most part I think this is a good representation of what the Natasha Denona Biba palette is. I think the Sahara metallic, that first one especially, is a little bit chunky, but it still looks beautiful on the eye. All right, moving on to the second row of the Sahara palette, we have Savannah, Adobe, and then we have Sierra, which is one of my favorite colors in the palette. Next is Jewel, and then the very last one is Fox. And these are, of course, all names of things that you would find in the Sahara, which I think is cool. Again, the shades on the left are actually from the Sahara palette, just so that you know which ones are which. And this row of all three rows, I think this row has the biggest differences between the Sahara and the Natasha Denona. The second shade there, Adobe, I think there is a difference not only in tone but also in texture. I actually prefer the Natasha Denona version of that particular color. And I think the middle color, Sierra, I prefer the Sahara version as opposed to the Natasha Denona. And then the last shade, Fox. I think the Natasha Denona is richer than the Sahara. So there are some differences in this row. I love the metallic. I think it's still beautiful. And yeah, so that's the second row. All right, moving on to the third row. We have Sands. Next we have Raven. Then we have Clay. And then we have Slate. Now this swatch right here, Slate, I jacked it up 3 ways to Sunday, so I apologize for that. And then the very last shade that we have is Mesa, which is a black. And this is the third row in the Sahara palette. So this row, I think they actually do a really good job with. Except for Clay, the middle shade is a lot lighter than the Natasha Denona gray. But I love Slate. I love Mesa. I actually prefer Mesa and Slate in the Sahara palette over the Natasha Denona palette. Actually, I prefer the Sahara formula overall as opposed to the Natasha Denona simply because it's such a user-friendly palette. It's great for beginners. Now, there are 2 types of shadows I want to go over with you guys. The first one is the shimmer shadows in the Biba palette. These 3 in particular. I want to look at the metallic shades from the Biba, and that's these 3 right here. There's only 3 metallics in the Biba palette. I want to look at them up against the 3 metallic shades in the Sahara, because I think that Natasha Denona is really well known for her metallics, and I think the Sahara palette did a really comparable job. They look good, they last a long time, they just look stunning, and I think they did a great job when it comes specifically to the metallics in this palette. I think they look really comparable to the Natasha Denona palette with it, which is, you know, that's definitely saying something. Now, when I first played with the Biba palette, there are 3 shades in the Biba palette, these 3 right here, that initially look like mattes, but they're not mattes. They're almost like satins. You see that sheen that they have? You can really see it on that black shade. They have kind of this subtle sheen, this really subtle shine to these shades. I thought the Sahara would not attempt to replicate a complex formula like this. I assumed the Sahara palette would just make these matte shades and just make them like any other matte. But they did, you guys. They actually did a great job replicating this specific formula. They have a beautiful sheen to them, and they did a great job, which was surprising to me. I actually really like the Sahara formula, especially on that mauve color and the black color. I just love these shades. I think they did a great job. Oh, another side note, the pans in the Sahara palette are magnetized, so you can pop them in and pop them out, which is another great feature. So as you guys can see, overall, I think they did a really good job. Now, let's talk about this from a texture perspective. Now, the Natasha Denona palette is incredibly soft. One of these is so soft that it continuously falls out of the pan. But aside from that, these are, I mean, they're very buttery to the touch. They just feel very luxe, very soft. The shimmers are really pretty. She's really well known for her shimmer formulas. There isn't any of her like crystal chroma formulas in here or pressed glitter formulas in here, just the shimmers that are in here, which I believe there are 3. Now, I can say the same thing about the Sahara palette. The one thing that I really like about this palette is that these are also really, really soft to the touch. However, there is minimal fallout. You don't see a whole lot of fallout with these shades, and the shimmer shades are also super, super soft, and they're not very chunky, and they are beautiful on the eye. I do want to show you guys application of the Sahara palette here. Now, one thing I was afraid of with this palette, it was even a concern of mine when I first saw the Biba palette. I was afraid that the colors were so similar that they would just muddy together and it would just look like you have one brown neutral eye. And that was a concern I have with the Biba palette. But after really playing with these colors for a couple of days just to see how performance is, they really do look beautiful on the eye, and you really can blend these out and get a gorgeous, gorgeous look. Of course, these are perfectly blendable. They look beautiful. They're buildable. They have great longevity. They stay on the eye all day long, and they look just as good in the evening when you take your makeup off as they did during the day. The one thing I will recommend with the shimmers in this palette is to use some kind of a shimmer primer or a glitter primer, some kind of primer underneath the shimmer, and that way you just get really, you know, a big bang for your buck when it comes to impact. It's kind of like wetting your brush and then dipping it into a shimmer shade. You know how it kind of pops that shimmer shade up just a little bit. Putting a primer down for the shimmer shades kind of does the same thing in the Sahara palette. So I personally really like it with like a primer, a pigment primer from NYX or the glitter primer from NYX. Either one of these make those shimmer shades in the Sahara palette look really, really good. They do great on their own, but I did like kind of kicking it up a notch using either the primer or the glitter glue. But either way, I actually have this look on tonight. It stays on. It looks great. It blends out. Overall, I love this palette, you guys. I think they did an amazing job. I think they did a great job at getting the color story down. And, you know, at the end of the day, the pans aren't as big as the Biba palette, but like I'll never even get through all of these shades, even at this size, you know what I'm saying? So I think my days of just having to have these gigantic pans are gone because I never ever use them all up. So I am absolutely fine with a smaller, more compact palette. I actually really, really like it because this will be great for travel. I can just pop it in a bag and go and have a whole palette full of neutrals. So again, I think this is a great win from Alter Ego. Absolutely Erica approved. And I think we're going to do a giveaway because I like it so, so much. So what I would like to do is I'd like to run a giveaway for the Sahara palette. So let's just run it for the next few days that we have left here in October. And all you'll have to do in order to be entered in to win the Sahara palette is like this video, put in the comments a way to get in touch with you in the event that you are the winner, and make sure that you are subscribed to me. So that's it. That's all you have to do. If you want to go ahead and send me a DM on Instagram, you can do that as well and just say, hey, contact me over here on Instagram. If I'm the winner, you are welcome to do that. I am over on Instagram at Erica Approved. Any way that you want me to reach out to you in the event that you are the winner is fine. You can give me your email address, whatever. All of the rules will be in the description box below, so don't forget to read that. And again, we will announce the winner of the Sahara palette live via live stream. The last live stream that we had was so much fun, and you guys asked for us to do some more live streams. So this is in an attempt to do just that. So we are going to do another live stream announcement, and we'll probably do another giveaway on the live stream that will just be for live stream attendees, similar to what we did on the last live stream as well. So definitely make sure that you show up for the live stream. The winner and the live stream will be taking place on Thursday, October the 3rd at 8 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. I believe that is a Thursday, if I'm not mistaken. Yes, it is a Thursday. So Thursday, October the 3rd at 8 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. Be here or be square. It'll be a lot of fun. We'll have another live stream announce the winner of the Sahara palette, and we'll have some other goodies to give away on the live stream as well. All right, you guys. Well, today's was short and sweet. I hope you enjoyed it. Good luck to everybody between now and October the 3rd. Get all of your things done. Subscribe, like this video, and make sure I can get in touch with you in the event that you are the winner. All right. Well, good luck to everybody. I love you guys the most. I hope all of you guys are all very, very happy and very, very healthy. And I will see you guys in the next video. Mwah.